Welcome to the Seahawks 360 podcast, a Sports Ethos production, where we look at the Seahawks from every angle, every week. I'm your host, Candace Higgins.
And I'm Tino Ganasius.
And we are here. We are back from a little bit of a break here. If you did not get the chance to check out the live recording I did with Joe Stevens, do go ahead, make sure to go ahead and check that out. But it's been a minute since Tino and I have been together, and quite a bit has happened. But most notably, the 53-man roster is released. We have our Seahawks roster for moving forward. So, Tino, what are just your initial thoughts when you look at how this roster turned out, the first one under Mike Macdonald?
You know, my first thought is like no real big surprises. I think, as we go position by position, there will be some things that I might have done differently that you might have done differently, but truthfully, nothing too crazy. And I think we're starting to get a better feel for, some of the philosophies of Mike Macdonald at each position and, where we're headed. So, yeah, like I said, no real surprises. We'll get into it. Super excited. I'm glad that there are a couple of players that I'm glad that made it that I expected to maybe get cut. We can get into that as well. But just kind of as planned, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, well, I will say I was surprised. Particularly, I was surprised about the offensive linemen and how they opted to do that. The Seahawks have never had 11 offensive linemen make the 53-man roster. Man, I really thought that was significant. And I like what it speaks to in terms of, like you said, we're learning more about their philosophy. And I like that. That I don't think, and it's a double-edged sword, and we can get into it when we get to that position. It's a double-edged sword in my opinion a little bit, but I'll talk about more about that later. But overall, I think the fact that outside of probably the offensive lineman thing, there probably weren't too many surprises, to your point, outside of that. And I like that because that means that the Seahawks have quality depth. And I think that's what speaks to me. That was really sort of my biggest takeaway from when you look at the 53-man is just, this team has talent in a lot of positions, and several of them are loaded. And that makes me excited going into the season opener.
Yep. They're not getting caught without having reinforcements on the line of scrimmage is one of my big takeaways, right? And you spoke to the 11 offensive linemen. We got the 3 centers. We got the young drafted offensive linemen that made the team. I think they're going to try to control the game at the line of scrimmage, and that's the kind of football I love, and I think that's the kind of football that wins. So, Yeah, super excited. Super excited. So quarterback, if we can get started here.
Yep.
Seahawks keep, obviously, Geno Smith, Sam Howell, PJ Walker, who started some games over the last couple of years, was the cut. No surprises there. I guess the big speaking point on quarterback is there were folks that were pumping Sam Howell up at the beginning of the season as a competitor for Geno Smith. I think it's pretty clear at this point, Geno Smith is the starter. Sam Howell is the apprentice, shall we say. You got comments on the quarterback position?
Yeah, no, I like to speak on, when this offseason started, the reports at the camp were that Sam Howell was closer to competing with PJ Walker than he was Geno Smith. And you don't like to hear that because this is a guy that the team traded for. I still have, is he still my guy for the future? Probably not, but I like him as a backup quarterback. I think you're in a great position there. I think he's probably one of the highest quality backups that you can get, especially because you saw him find his rhythm throughout the preseason. You saw him get better. You saw him make good decisions, which I can appreciate compared to Drew Lock. I put him higher on my list than Drew Lock for sure. So coming after that, I really just appreciate his process. He seemed like he worked on some of his weaknesses that you saw with the Commanders. And so I feel more confident in my backup quarterback. And I think that's how you really want to feel. The fact that there was a huge gap between Sam Howell and PJ Walker in the end is exactly how you want it to be.
His play, I have to say, his play in the preseason was kind of the opposite of what he did in Washington. And he commented a bit on why he threw so many picks and how they were coming from behind all the time. And I think that if his development, if you can kind of cut off what he was doing in Washington and allow him to start anew in Seattle, I do think that he is potentially, at least we give him a shot to prove whether he's the quarterback of the future or not. It also depends on what Mike Macdonald and Ryan Grubb want from a quarterback, right? So
Right.
some teams want a quarterback that's going to be dynamic and interesting and carry the team. You've got your Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen types. And then there are coaches that want to stay out of third and long. They want to control possession. They want to control the ball. And if Sam Howell continues to prove that he's not going to make mistakes, that he can scramble a little bit, that he's going to take the check down, that sort of thing, he might be the right quarterback for that type of coach. I know that's not sexy to most fans, but there are a lot of coaches that really do value that. So I don't know. I saw a different Sam Howell in this preseason than what we saw in Washington. And for me, I was excited because I think that is, if it's not what Ryan Grubb wants, it's to a certain extent, it's what Mike Macdonald wants. But I think you're right. I don't know if you win a Super Bowl with Sam Howell. I think you win, you know, he doesn't hurt. He may get to a place where he doesn't necessarily hurt you as the quarterback, but he may not take you to the promised land.
Yeah, yeah. Like, but I said I think I'm great with him as the backup. So
Mhm.
I'm pleased with that. Pleased with his growth as a player. That's sort of my style as well. Like if I'm gonna have a guy that can't take me to the promised land, I want my backup guy to be stable, to be able to hold down the ship, and his ability to I'd say transform his game is
Mhm.
pretty impressive. And it speaks, I will say some of it I think was a bit of Ryan Grubb adjusting to him, but also him adjusting to Ryan Grubb. And you like to see that.
My thought with Sam Howell is what my mom used to say, which is don't do nothing stupid, right? Like, but she used to tell me, like, go out, go play, go do your thing, right? Be you, don't do nothing stupid. Like
Yep,
that's I literally lived by
I
that
like
as
it.
a kid. And that's kind of what, I think Sam Howell needed was just, go out there, be you, do a little improv if you need to, roll out all those things, but don't do nothing stupid.
Yep,
That's my Sam Howell thing.
I like it.
So running back, we talked a lot about McIntosh and George Holani.
Yep.
Um, McIntosh made the team. Holani is on the practice squad. The Seahawks are carrying three running backs. What I will say is, I think Holani was what I expected him to be, which is, a stout run or a pass blocker, able to catch the ball out of the backfield, strong. His contact balance was great. But McIntosh, I knew he had it in him, but the explosiveness that he showed was really fun. And you can see, in my opinion, you can see a place where if, say, Kenneth Walker goes down, right? And Charbonnet is your lead back, and you have to give McIntosh, say, 8 carries a game, and he's your third down back. I think you get something real positive from him in that kind of situation. I'm excited about Kenny McIntosh. I think it was the right call to keep him and have George Holani on the practice squad. I do think Holani is an NFL running back as a backup, but McIntosh showed me a lot. He is explosive.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I was really pleased with what this competition did for both of these guys. I think that competition really continued for them to level up on their game because George Holani really had edged out Kenny McIntosh for some time in the middle of camp. And then McIntosh just sort of when the game started, I think he just kind of took and ran with it. He did improve some in his
Yep.
blitz pickups. I don't think it'll ever be a strength of his game, but if he can just be serviceable in that department,
Right.
I think he showed that, and he has enough talent that won him the spot. I genuinely thought that they were going to go with four running backs because
Mhm.
I just found it hard to cut either of them. And I'm really glad or grateful that they were able to get Halani back on this practice
Mhm.
squad because I think very highly of him. I think I've said this before, but I love the dynamic between, like you said, Kenny McIntosh is a great substitution. I mean, a lower quality, but
Mhm.
a great substitution for Kenneth Walker. And I think George Holani is a great substitution for Zach Charbonnet in terms
Mhm.
of what they bring, the style that they play with. They're not exactly the same players, but I think you can run the same play calls for either of them. And that's a really fun place to be
Right.
when it comes to your running back room. And I don't think I've ever seen, at least in the Pete Carroll era for sure, a dynamic quite like that.
Well, think about this. Your favorite guy DJ Dallas was in that spot over the last couple of years, and he drove all of us crazy because there was no explosiveness, right? He was
Nope.
there because he could pick up the blitz and he had reliable hands, but he looked like he ran a 4.65,
Yeah.
and he was boring, for that matter. And you put in a Kenny McIntosh who he can fly, right? It's clear he may not run a sub 4.4, but that's what he looks like out there.
Yeah.
And to have that kind of explosiveness is just, you like that as a fan. That's a lot of fun. And to your point, Holani is that guy who isn't going to make mistakes, who's going to get the hard yards. I don't know. I like him. I think he's a championship type depth player. I'm
Yeah.
glad he's on the practice squad. It won't surprise me to see him get signed away, but I do hope they carry 4. And I do think that if they were to carry 4, they would be able to keep K9 fresh and keep Charbonnet fresh and have injury replacements if they needed it. I don't know. I love the running back room. I gave grades actually for each position, and I gave the Seahawks running backs an A-.
Yeah. I think that's fair. I think that's
Mhm.
fair. I will say I don't think it'll be as much of a need. The only reason why I can see why they went with 3 is because I really, from everything that's coming out of training camp, I believe they're going to run Kenneth Walker way
Yeah.
more than we're
Yep.
used to seeing him. They plan on him being a third down back sometimes instead of us having a separate quote unquote third down back, which is awesome,
Mhm.
by the way. But because of that, I think they felt like they don't have to have 4, even though I
Right.
think both of these guys, I agree with you, deserve to be on the roster. But I think you can keep Halani, but I'm sure that at some point you will see him a couple of times throughout the season. I have no doubt about that.
Mhm. Wide receiver. Seahawks obviously keep DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, JSN, Jake Bobo. And then Laviska Shenault is kept as the what I would call the number 5. He's kind of the gadget guy, jet sweep, returning kicks. And then Derek Young as well, special teams ace, tall, fast, strong. Practice squad players, White and Winston are both on the practice squad. But the big news, I think, is that D. Eskridge, former second round pick, was cut by the new coaching staff. Your initial reactions to the 6 that were kept and D. Eskridge being cut?
This went exactly like I thought it was going to go. It
Mhm.
really did. I mean, we didn't get the chance to do projections before 53 came out, but that was exactly what I had it slated as. I know a lot of people really liked Cody White, liked Easop Winston Jr. and I like those guys too. I think those are guys that you could put on the practice squad. I think they bring a lot. And I think you feel great about that depth. I mean, it's really great. I mean, in the past, we've had wide receivers on the practice squad, but like you didn't really want to see anybody.
Right.
If I saw a Easop Winston Jr. in as your 6th wide receiver, I'm good with that, or even your 5th.
Yep.
I'm not I'm not loving it, but I think I'm good with that as long as he's
Well,
not your 4th. But
he's
these
gonna
are guys,
run. He's gonna run the correct route, right? He's
right?
not gonna leave the quarterback out there hanging. He's gonna run the correct route. If you get it in his general vicinity, he's gonna catch it. He's just not gonna be explosive
Right.
necessarily, but he's gonna make the play, right? And I think
He's
that's
got
super
great
valuable.
hands. Great
Mhm.
hands. Great hands.
So let me ask you this. We all know DK Lockett, we've talked about JSN and his ascension, even Bobo. The big one for me is, and the interesting one, or the interesting 2 decisions are Laviska Shenault, who I think brings a really different dimension
Yep.
to this team and something that Ryan Grubb wants to do. And then I guess the importance of these kind of special teams athletes like a Derek Young, and why someone like him is why he's so important to this team, despite the fact that he may never see the field as a wide receiver.
Yeah, no, I agree, and yes, I'm sure some of it has to do with special teams, no doubt.
Mhm.
But in the case of Derek Young, John Snyder was very high on him. If you guys recall, I think at the end of the offseason before last, he was asked sort of who he felt would break out, what player he thought would take the next step. And his answer at the time was Derek Young. Now, Derek Young ultimately got injured really early in the year, and we did not see him. I think we did see him a couple times, but he was sort of still, he wasn't really himself, if I'm not mistaken. think he ended up getting a couple reps in. But anyway, he just really didn't get some momentum. The injury really held him back.
Right.
But so on that alone, I wasn't surprised that compared to some of these other guys, John Snyder really wants to see Derek Young do well, especially because it seemed like by all accounts, he had a good training camp. And when preseason games came on, both him and Chenault did well. They did.
Mhm.
I think they really set themselves apart from the other guys. And so both of those things considered, I don't think there was a real consideration, or I don't think there should have been a true consideration for the other guys. As great as they were, you're just that stacked a wide receiver right now.
Right. Well, and Chenault, man, he was fun when he played at Colorado in college, and he was supposed to be a much better player when he was drafted, but he really does kind of change the complexion of the offense and makes it much more horizontal, which I think is really interesting and is something that's important to Ryan Grubb, is that you really do kind of open up that defense by having a horizontal threat. And JSN can take a jet sweep, sure. Tyler Lockett can take a jet sweep, but it's a very
Not
different.
really.
Right. Well, that's my point, though, right? Chenault is like a running back and is a true threat. The other thing he did, and I think he already made the team by this point, but the block that he made in the last preseason game, I think really did solidify his place, because he's a big dude and a strong dude. And then you saw later on in the game, D. Eskridge miss a block. And I think that was the perfect demonstration of why Chenault should be on this team. And Eskridge maybe not. Eskridge might be faster, might be a little more explosive, but the reality is you can't miss assignments like that, right? You can't whiff on a block. Chenault was doing all the right things. I'm excited. I think he's going to be a difference maker at some point in this season for the Seahawks. And I think they upgraded in both talent and being assignment, kind of correct by having him on in this wide receiver core.
Well said.
Super excited. Tight end. Seahawks keep Noah Fant, obviously, Farrell Brown, free agent signing, AJ Barner, 4th round pick, and then Brady Russell as well.
The team.
He did make the team. So 4 tight ends, which is, teams will vacillate between 3 and 4 tight ends. And Brady Russell wasn't necessarily expected to make the team, but he did. Your thoughts on this tight end room?
That's a little underwhelming, frankly.
You think?
It's a little underwhelming, especially coming off of last year. I will just say this: you need Noah Fant healthy. That's really what it comes down to. Farrell Brown, who I like him for what he is. I think he brings great blocking, but he is injured right now. His health is in question, and while he looks optimistic to start week 1, we don't know that. And I like Brady Russell. I really do. Actually, he showed me quite a bit. I think he has a Jake Bobo quality about his game. Something about that. He just makes
underdog white dude or what?
No. Well, that too, maybe. But okay, maybe he seems like if oh goodness, if a Nick Ballore and Jake Bobo were a player together, it seems like that's Brady Russell. Just because he does, from all accounts, have a somewhat quirky personality. I don't know if you saw the video of him warming up.
I did. It was funny. He was hilarious.
Yeah, he seems like a funny guy, but also just the fact that he makes plays, right? So like, he's not the fastest guy, he's not the best blocker, but he just seems savvy in what he does well, seems savvy in his footwork, savvy in his ability to just understand how to get to the right spots. And he seems like he's got pretty consistent hands, so able to make maybe some tougher plays. And so that's why I say it reminds me of Jake Bobo a little bit, where you're not really sure why this guy is showing up and showing well, but he just got a quality about him. Just something works for him.
Well,
and
I can see too, if he's like the 2nd or 3rd tight end in a formation, and he's, able to double team a good defensive end or a good edge, and then drift out into the flat and catch a pass for a first down, or be, an H-back fullback type. He's 6'3", 250.
Yeah.
And he's the one person or the one player on the offense who has that build to really be able to play a little bit of fullback. And so if they need to go
Sure.
the fullback or it's short yardage, I can see him being an important part of that too. I think every team needs a player like him. It's a little bit of a luxury, but I think every team needs a player like Russell. And I didn't mind seeing it at all. I don't, like you said, I don't love this group. This group makes me a little bit nervous. I think, Noah Fant is your pass catching tight end, but doesn't block really, really well. Farrell Brown is a blocker, not a great pass catcher. AJ Barner looks lost. I hate to say that about my Michigan guy, but
Yeah.
he looked pretty lost in the preseason. And I think he's lucky he made this team because he was a fourth round pick, not because he played well in the preseason. I'll be the first to admit that. So underwhelming room. It would not surprise me to see them, try to pick up some sort of tight end that gets cut maybe. I don't know who the move would be if they did, but yeah, underwhelming, I think, for me as well.
Yeah, I'd agree. It's really tough because I think you have a different perspective on this room if AJ Barner showed you anything. But I mean,
he dropped the pass. He didn't look great as a blocker. I think he's going to be a project, but he better get it in gear, because if he doesn't, within the next year or so, he may not be on this team next year.
Yeah, no, I'd actually, I mean, it's sad to say, but frankly, I'd rather see Tyler Mabry than AJ Barner on the field right now.
If you're trying to win this year, maybe. If they're looking at next year, the year after, I think you stick with Barner because there is potential.
Oh, well, I guess I just mean in a game. So like roster-wise, they made the right decision. Yes.
Yes. And Mabry, go ahead.
Yes. When a roster-wise, they made the right decision. I'm still, he's a rookie. He's a fourth-round draft pick. I think you keep him on this roster, and you can slip Tyler maybe to the practice squad because he's just a perennial practice squad guy. But he has played for you in pinches, and he's done fairly well. He hasn't disappointed. And so if it comes down to a game-time decision and they've got to call somebody up, man, I really, I want to see Mabry on the field over AJ Barner if he's a call-up from the practice squad. That's really where we stand right now.
Right. And Mabry is, I should have said, Mabry is on the practice squad.
Right.
All right. We get into your favorite position, offensive tackle. So Charles Cross, George Fant, those are your starting tackles. Stone Forsythe and Mr. Michael Jarrell made the team as the fourth tackle. You have Pritchard on the practice squad, and your boy Abe Lucas is on the PUP list. Your thoughts?
So my first thought is, I remember joking about getting a Michael Jarrell jersey because I wanted Stone Forsythe on this team. And somehow, even though Mike Jarrell made the team, I still got to watch Stone Forsythe on my team, man.
Oh, man.
It seems like I can't win. Now, he did. I mean, I get why they kept him. I think they had to keep him. Given the circumstances he started for you, but that man has got to have like some pictures of somebody that's embarrassing and blackmailing him or something.
That or Raekwon O'Neal is a lot more than I thought he was, because I thought he would make the team. Between O'Neal and Curtis, I thought they could cover one of the tackle spots, but evidently Stone Forsythe is. Like you said, he's got something on somebody, because I don't know how he made this.
I mean, he got pancaked in the preseason. I mean, good Lord.
No.
Now he did show some. See, the problem with Forsythe is his low lights are really bad. But he can give you some decent play. He just can have really embarrassing plays.
He puts up tape or like a bad corner, right? A corner that gets burnt for like a 70-yard bomb.
Yeah.
That's like the Stone Forsythe tape as a tackle. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's bad.
It is. But I heard great things about Charles Cross. Your prediction might be closer to being right. I mean, it sounded crazy from me, but he does seem to have taken a step. Most people are saying Pro Bowl, not all pro. But I will happily take that. This team needs someone to take a step forward. Yes. I like that they kept some of the young guys. I liked Jalen. I'm sorry. I'm getting ahead of myself. We're on the tackles. Just kidding. I think this is about what you would expect. I'm surprised again that so many people made the room or like
Right.
made the cut.
Right.
I get why they didn't keep McClendon Curtis. I was surprised they did not keep McClendon Curtis just because of his versatility. Definitely in the Pete Carroll era, he would have stayed,
Hmm.
but he got beat often. Now, I don't think that's his fault because I think he's truly a guard. They did
Right.
not play him at guard. They really didn't put him in an advantage, truly, in my opinion. Kind of feel bad for the kid. But anyway, he's still on the practice squad, so I think he'll be fine. He is
Mhm.
not a tackle in this
No.
league, and he was absolutely a turnstile in the preseason. Um, so if you're just going on preseason tape, I get why he got cut. But I like him. Yeah, I'm still
We gonna talk about the elephant in the room or no?
Abe Lucas. Sure, why not, man? But I did, but I'm not surprised by him being on pup. I'm really not. I told you that. I went on record, man. I went on record. I said, I
You
mean,
thought
even if
maybe
I
he'd
said
be
even
ready
if he
though.
does not start the season, I care more about him getting on the field and staying on the field than
This is
rushing him back for him to be on off flip flopping, looking
this is
unhealthy
a
like he
case
did
of
last.
they gotta say the right thing. This is a case of they gotta say the right thing. We knew what they would say if he ended up on the pup list. But if you would have said last year, towards the end of last year, that Abe Lucas was gonna start the 2024 season on the pup list, everybody would have been scared, right? I think at this point, for me, I know we obviously we both take very different perspectives on this, but I do wonder, the way that they were talking about it, people were asking, like, is he going to play this year?
Right,
That was the line of questioning when
right.
they were talking about it. And so I don't know. I At this point in time, I if he's going to be out, say he's out for 8 games, right?
Hmm.
Which I don't think is unrealistic at this point.
Hmm.
And say the Seahawks suffer one injury to either Cross or Fan. What happens to this offensive line?
Well, you're right about that. No, you're right about
No,
that.
it's scary.
I feel better about Fant than you do, no
Mm-hmm.
question. But
Mm-hmm.
I mean, throwing
I think,
force like it's that guy next guy up, and we know how I feel about that.
right. And
Um,
I love
but
Jarrell. I think Jarrell's a really good athlete. And I think if you can coach him up, I can see him being serviceable, right?
right,
But I guess and George Fant, for all the trash that I talk, like I get it. It makes, he's a serviceable right tackle. But again, we're in this position now with not knowing when Abe Lucas is coming back. We're in a position of one injury, which is not uncommon,
right.
right? One injury to one of those top two. And this whole offense has to change,
Yeah,
especially if it's Cross.
I agree. I'm with you. I like Jarrell. I think he's got upside, but I think that's what this team. I think the team agrees with you
Mm-hmm.
because, and this is what I was going to say for the when we got to this point. This was going to be my point.
Mm-hmm.
I think that they they wouldn't have had this many guys on the offensive line if people had claimed jobs,
Sure.
if people had solidified spots. Then I think they can make clear and decisive decisions. I think they see a lot of guys with a lot of upside,
Mm-hmm.
and particularly with their young guys. And then they see some guys who can be more consistent and have some experience. And they don't know in a given game situation who to go to. And so they're keeping everybody because they have no idea how to play
Sure.
it out. And you know what? And I think when you're in this situation, that's probably the best thing you can do. I mean, just realistically. I mean, you got your upside guys, you got your guys who've given you some experience in the past. And if
Mm-hmm.
you end up needing to go to either one of them, you just shuffle them in and take
Right.
turns. I think that's the reason you don't have these guys on practice squads because I think if Abe Lucas is healthy, there's no question. There's no this many guys, they're not making the team. It's really because of that giant question mark. And I think this is the right move. I support what they're doing because frankly, offensive linemen are just hard to find. You're just not going
Right.
to be able to get good ones. If someone lets one go, it's for a reason.
Right.
So you do what you can.
I would say that their magic number is probably 10,
Yeah.
right? I bet you it's four guards, four tackles, two centers. I think we haven't talked about the centers yet, but I think Sundell was kept in large part because they don't know if Connor Williams is going to be ready for week one.
Correct.
I don't know if Sundell was kept because they wanted 11 as much as it was, we don't know if he's ready for week one. We need an insurance policy just in case. That would be my guess. We can talk about center now and then get back to guard.
Yeah, let's go
So,
ahead and do center
so
because
the Hawks kept Connor Williams, who obviously they signed 1 year, 4 year, or $4 million contract. Great run blocking center. We don't know if he's ready for week one or not. Oluwatimi is a very good backup at center. And then they kept Sundell, who is an undrafted free agent out of North Dakota State. Again, I think they kept 3 in case Williams wasn't ready. It would not surprise me to see Sundell go on to the practice squad once Williams is ready to go. But this unit to me looks very solid. What do you think about the centers?
I don't think it looks as solid as you do. Well, I'm high on Connor Williams, but I think Jalen Sundell being on this roster is an indictment on Oluwatimi. I think it's
just because Williams isn't ready.
on him. They
I
don't
think Williams ain't ready.
They trust that they don't trust him. You don't need you don't need 2 backup centers.
No, I agree, but you need 2 if Williams isn't ready to go week one. What I'm saying is Sundell goes to the practice squad once Williams is ready.
I agree, but I think it has a lot more to do with, I think that competition is still, I don't think Olu's earned the backup. I think part of it is what you said, but I also think part of it is Olu hasn't earned the backup spot, and they don't just want to give it to him. Jalen Sundell put some great things on tape. He really stood out. I think he stood out all preseason.
Against the 4s or against the 5s or what?
Correct, which is why I think they kind of want to see what he can do against some stiffer competition, because I don't think that Olu's made much progress. Frankly, his ability to get pushed at the line of scrimmage is poor. And I just don't see any growth from him his rookie year to now. I can't point to a single area of his game that's gotten better, and he's gotten all of the opportunity in the world. This franchise has given him all of the opportunity in the world, and it still seems like he can't claim that position and own it for himself. I think
his play hasn't been great, but my argument against that is they would have gotten rid of him instead of Nick Harris if they didn't believe in him.
I don't think so. I think they
would have kept Harris, and they would have either cut or traded Oluwatimi if they didn't think that he was the answer as the backup to Connor Williams, right? They had a choice as to which one they were going to keep.
I'll tell you why I don't think so. Because there's an easy offer on the table for Nick Harris, because it was Cleveland. It's where if they wanted him, their guy went down and they wanted him back, essentially. You go with a guy who's most easily tradable. He had a trade market. Olu didn't.
We don't know that though, right?
Well, we don't know, but he had an easy, like, Nick Harris was the easiest guy to trade out, because that was just a, hey, swap, can we get our guy back?
Sure.
Boom, boom.
I think I'm not sure
that speaks to Olu winning this job. Mike has not had pleasant things to say, frankly, when it comes to Olu. Like, he does not seem sold on that guy at all. And I don't think that's for no reason. The tape backs it up. I just don't.
If they thought he was going to be a starter, they wouldn't have signed Connor Williams. I agree. That part I get. I think that Sundell being on the roster is not an indictment of Oluwatimi as much as it is we don't know if Williams is ready. It'll be interesting once Williams is ready to start at center, what the move is. And then we'll see exactly where the Seahawks head is with regards to the center position at that point in time. But for me,
he will go back. I think he will go back. But I guess I'll just say, I think in a lot of cases across the NFL, even if your starter is not slated to, start in the beginning of the season, if you think there may be a few weeks, 2 or 3, maybe it seems like maybe 2 or 3 weeks behind at the most, right? It's not on PUP. So that's the case. That's what your backup's for. You don't typically see a backup for the backup on the 53-man roster.
You do if the player that's supposed to start is going to come back before 4 games, right? Because if Williams is not ready to go, but you want him to start weeks 3 and 4, what are you going to do? You can't just keep one center. And if Tomlinson or Bradford or Haynes or Laumea had experience as a center, then sure. If they would have kept someone who had some experience at center and could swing, maybe. But the reality is they don't have anyone who can play center outside of Oluwatimi if Sundell isn't kept. That's why I think Sundell's on the team.
Perhaps.
We'll see. We will see. We will see. We spent a lot of time on center, but we will see for sure.
Perhaps.
All
Like I
right.
said, yeah, I'll leave it be. But I think even no matter what happens with this, I still stand that Olu has not. He got a lot of proof. I'll say that.
Yeah, I don't think he's a starter, but I do think he's entrenched as the backup. But we'll see. Guard. So we have Laken Tomlinson and Anthony Bradford likely as the starters at guard. We've talked about them ad nauseum on previous 360s. Christian Haynes, third round pick. Laumea, I believe a fourth round pick or a fifth round pick.
Yeah.
Are the two backup guards, both rookies. McClendon Curtis is on the practice squad. I like these four guys a lot. I would like it more if Haynes earns one of the starting guard jobs and Bradford is your third, but I like it. It doesn't bother me. I gave the group a B. I said it's a fun group. I'm super interested to see what the rookies end up doing. It's interesting to me that Haynes and Laumea are, they're tough and strong, but they're also a little more nimble than Tomlinson and Bradford.
Yeah.
I'm very interested to see what the Seahawks decide to do moving forward with regards to, what type of player they want or they target on the offensive line.
Yeah, I kind of feel worse about this position than I did when the preseason started. Honestly, I was a little higher on it. I just between that competition between Haynes and Bradford, Bradford still winning out isn't great for me because I still feel like Bradford has the same issues he had last year. Again, it's just not seeing a lot of growth with some of these offensive linemen, some of these guys that we've seen for years, just not seeing any progress. He's got some great run blocks. I mean, the guy can maul, but then he can be like, I heard Brian Nimhauser say that Anthony Bradford had Jermaine Fetty like pass protection. And boy, I think that is so accurate. It really is. It really is. And that makes me nervous. Now, I do feel good about the fact that I think they'll be able to get some holes in the run game because that was a big problem last year. Not only was the pass protection poor, but you couldn't get anything in the run game either. Think we're improved in that regard for sure. Just worried about it from a pass protection aspect, but they do have the upside. I think I like this room a whole lot better maybe a year from now, maybe with some added depth to truly better challenge Bradford. And Haynes, I think Haynes could win out. That I'm not sure that competition is just over. Haynes is pushing. Haynes has grown.
I was gonna say I don't think Bradford starting is an indictment of Haynes at all. I think Haynes had really showed out a bit in games, right? We heard some things about practice, and he was on the third team or whatever at the beginning of training camp. But the reality is, if he's not really a superstar in camp as a third round guard, he may not start those first couple of games. But I think we saw a lot from him in the preseason. And they may not be 100% comfortable with him starting those first couple of weeks, but it would not surprise me to see him in the lineup, weeks 3, 4, 5, 6, kind of as the season goes on. I don't think Bradford and Tomlinson starting is an indictment of Haynes at all. I think it's just he's a rookie, right? And I do also think that as the offense opens up and then they want to pass a little bit more, I do think that we're going to see Haynes more as well. And I don't think Haynes is a great pass blocker necessarily, but as you said, Bradford is a straight up mauler, right?
Yeah.
And he's not good in pass protection. And again, as they start to want to open up this offense, I think they're going to have to make some changes at guard. But I like Laumea a lot, and I like Haynes a lot. And I think there is potential for them to be your starting guards as early as next year, those two.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. I like this. I like it long term for sure.
Mm.
Short term, we'll see some question marks, but I agree with you. Haynes is the one, I say the one lone offensive lineman outside of, well, Jarrell actually as well. Seems like your younger guys were the
Yep.
guys who really showed the most improvement. Your year two, three, four guys did not.
Right.
And that is what it is, but at least the team's done right in what they could do by keeping both, just seeing where
Right.
the chips fall.
And I think it's a success, right? If you keep Haynes, Laumea, and Jarrell, and from our eyes, they look like they made progress, and you can see some athleticism. Those are good draft picks, right? If they
Right.
made the team and you can see potential for them, I think to me that's a huge success as far as the draft goes to
Yeah,
have those three guys there.
agreed.
Let's move to the defense. So
Fine.
hold on here, let me get my stuff straight. So D end. So our lads had some interesting stuff as far as who they had where. D end, they had Leonard Williams and Mike Morris as the two players at D end. No surprises there with Morris making the team.
No.
No real, surprises as far as who was cut. They kept Bars and Levelston on the practice squad. You can debate kind of where those players slot in. And then Jaron Reed, obviously, Byron Murphy, obviously, Miles Adams, Jonathan Hankins. I'm just going to go through the line. Do you have any surprises on the D line? Anything you thought they should have done differently?
No, I wasn't sure if Miles Adams was going to make this roster, knowing
Uh-huh.
that he's a holdover, he's sort of a fringe bubble guy. I'm happy he made the team. I think him making the team is because Cameron Young is on PUP. I am surprised more at Cameron Young still being on PUP more
Mm-hmm.
than, I think if if you told me Young is on PUP, then I'd say, yeah, Adams makes the team.
Right.
So with that in mind, no, but at least happy for him because I mean, I absolutely love this defensive line just from top to bottom. I don't think you can, I'm not going to say you can't get better. I mean, obviously you can, but just from where we've seen this defensive line come from,
Right.
this is stacked. It's loaded. And even having a guy like a Miles Adams, who you feel comfortable taking snaps for you. If somebody goes down, you're
Mm-hmm.
good with him playing. He's flawed as a player, but you like what he brings to the team. Really excited about some of the things I saw from the defensive line, particularly Mike Morris in preseason. They had that guy everywhere. They had him spying the QB. He was in coverage. He was on the defensive. I mean, man, was he a weapon? And I mean, that's what he was in college, right? That's how Mike McDonald used him in Michigan.
Yep.
And you like to see that translate because, you know, seeing Mike Morris play this role, it really makes me wonder. I'm not sure that the this is no offense to Pete, but I'm not sure that Pete was ever going to be able to get the best out of him
Right.
without using him in that way.
Right.
If you're going to pigeonhole him, I think that was always going to sort of cap his ceiling because he seems like a chess piece kind of guy.
Mm-hmm. There's I what I like too is you've got that, like when I said D end and talked about Williams and Morris, that's that real power D end spot
Mm-hmm.
that needs to be able to do multiple things. As you said, you've got to be able to stop, very much hold up and stop the run, but you've also got to be able to penetrate a little bit and get to the quarterback. And I like, if Williams, obviously, like you signed Leonard Williams to this big contract, he's very talented. Mike Morris is not of that talent level necessarily, but if something happens to Williams, you don't experience this type of drop off that other teams might. I think the depth
Right.
is really, really interesting. The one question I have for you is, I see obviously Murphy as that, penetrating, in the best case scenario, three tech sort of D tackle.
Mm-hmm.
What do you do without Cam Young? What are you doing in the nose tackle spot besides Hankins? Is it going to be Reed? And then if Reed's playing nose tackle, Murphy slides into that D tackle role?
Yeah, that's pretty much my guess.
Mhm.
I think Hank can give you quite a bit at nose, but I also think they're going to do so many different packages that I'm not sure
Right.
you need a nose out there every snap. Yeah, Jay Reed can slide in. Byron Murphy, he did very well playing those. They used him at nose quite a bit actually in the preseason. And so I'm not really worried about that. Even though they're smaller guys, I actually think that perhaps I'm just not high on Cameron Young, but I actually think they could give you more than Cameron Young would give you. I just haven't been impressed with him. I mean, even as a prospect, I didn't like his tape that much, but
I think Cam Young is the Hankins type of, take up two blocks or two offensive linemen, free up the linebacker to make the play, sort of nose tackle. Whereas if it's Reed and Murphy, you're trying to get upfield and split the block as opposed to holding up the block. I just find it interesting philosophically, the difference between some of those guys.
I'll push back a little bit on the Cameron Young. If you go back and look at his tape, he really struggled to take on double teams, which is what made me not happy.
Theoretically, that's the player who he is, right? Yeah, that size of player is supposed to take up space and in the way that a Hankins does. I don't know if that's who he is, but that's what he's supposed to be. That's why he's why they see the potential in him.
Fair enough.
Russian. So I have a question for you at Russian, because Dre'Mont Jones is the one. Everywhere you look, Dre'Mont Jones is listed as your one and Mafe as your two. Mm-hmm. Is that in name only, or do you believe that that's what they want from Dre'Mont Jones and Mafe may not see the field all the time?
I think that's what they want. I don't think that's on paper, especially because it sounds like Mafe didn't have a bad camp. They just didn't stand out in camp. Mm-hmm. And he may be more of a gamer. That wouldn't surprise me. But because he sort of, the last, you don't really hear him. Well, actually, last training camp, you did hear quite a bit about him. But his rookie year, for sure, like people, he didn't show much. So I wouldn't surprise me if Mafe got a rhythm in sort of as the season went along. Mm-hmm. But I think they like Dre'Mont Jones there. I think they like his versatility. Versatility is key. I think athleticism is key. And I think based on the prototypes of what Mike Macdonald seems to like in his guys, mm-hmm. I can see how Dre'Mont Jones would be ahead. Now, if Dre'Mont Jones isn't producing, I also don't think Mike Macdonald would have any qualms about increasing Mafe's snaps, particularly if he's being effective with what he's given. So the question is, can Mafe be efficient enough to earn more snaps? Because it seems like Mike Macdonald is not a guy of favoritism. He puts whoever plays best out there, plain and simple. And so everybody's equal opportunity to earn opportunity. Mm-hmm. And so I think this makes sense. I actually kind of I love the idea of Mafe, who we know can be a quality starter, being a 2 because your depth is just that great. That's kind of nice, to be honest.
See, I take the other side. I think Mafe and Murphy are your two most talented players in the front seven. And Mafe is in a contract year, I believe. Dre'Mont Jones signed the big contract. I think that, could it be, suppressing Mafe's numbers or time a little bit if they can to try to make him re-signable? I think that's a question that's worth asking. I also think Mafe has the potential to be a game breaker, right? Or game wrecker. And he's somebody I would want to have on the field all the time. So I do wonder, to your point, I wonder if the new coaching staff sees him a little differently. I wonder if he didn't come to camp all the way ready to go. It's just interesting to me because Mafe is one of the best players on this defense, in my opinion. And to see him not listed as a starter was very interesting.
I heard in one-on-ones, he didn't really win any reps. Mm-hmm. 1v1s, he struggled in 1v1s. He didn't win any reps.
Yeah, but he put up a lot of tape last year.
That was last year. That's what I'm saying. So, that was last year, man. I think it's really
but he balled out. Think about how we were talking about him in the offseason.
Yeah.
Is he in a bit of a slump?
Is he in a bit of a slump? I don't know. Maybe.
I don't think so. I think they're suppressing his. You see this in baseball a lot.
Well, the only reason why I don't think so is because no one's talked about him in camp, and everybody talked about him in camp last year. So if he had a ton of camp buzz, and yet he was still you know, under Draymond Jones, then I would agree with you. I think it was suppression, but he's had literally no buzz. Didn't he play in the preseason?
But camp buzz can also be agenda driven, right? It's not. I don't know.
Media?
I still believe he and Byron Murphy are the two most talented players in the front seven, and I think that'll prove out over the season. And I'm not.
I think
I'm
Derek
not.
Hall is coming from Mafe.
I mean, no, I think Derek Hall is great. Though we haven't gotten to him yet. I think he's great,
I
but
think I think
I
he I
haven't
think Derek
seen.
Hall's buzz. I think Derek Hall is the reason why. More so than Draymond Jones. I think
Um,
they see Derek Hall really balling out, and I think they're more impressed by him even than Mafe.
Hall plays the Nwosu role though, right? Hall's listed as behind Nwosu, and so those are two different positions for me. I think the other thing is what have we seen from Draymond Jones that's allowed him to be to run with the ones? Has he done anything as a Seahawk that's allowed him to do that?
I think you're looking at it from past, and I think this coaching staff is looking at what they saw this offseason.
Sure. No, that's
That's
fair
different.
because it's a new coaching staff. That's totally fair.
Right. I think
Still think ultimately,
we're considering all things. We're considering everything we've seen in the past, and they're not. They're just not. I don't think
right,
they care what you did last year.
right.
Yeah, I mean, it's a bit of a double-edged sword to that. I mean, there are some downsides for sure because I get your point. But I think if Mafe wants snaps, he'll be able to earn it. I'm not worried about that. If Mafe balls out and he earns more snaps, he'll get them. But he's got to do that. And as much as I like Mafe and as high as I still am, I'm not gonna say I flipped. It also wouldn't surprise me if he dropped off and that year was a bit of an aberration, kind of like a Frank Clark, if you will. That wouldn't surprise me either.
I think Mafe ends up being one of the top players on this defense by the end of the year because he's one of the most talented. But
I
again,
love it.
We'll see what happens. I hope he's not great so they can re-sign him and then he's great for the next 3 years after that, to be honest with you. But
He's
we'll
in
see
year
what
three.
happens.
He's in
Mm-hmm.
year three. So this is I mean, it depends on your definition of contract year.
Right.
He's still under contract in 2025.
Yeah. But he'll if they don't sign him to that extension this year, then he's basically a lame duck.
Uh,
Um,
I don't think that works that way with defensive linemen. I think that's true with like star players, but not with like
we will see. I don't know. I love Mafe and I'm not a believer in Draymond Jones, but I am a believer in Mike McDonald. So we'll see what happens.
good stuff.
Linebacker. Jerome Baker looks to be healthy. Obviously, your boy Tyrese Knight. I think he played pretty well in the offseason. Enjoyed watching him play. Nwosu did not go on the pup list, which was a huge deal, maybe the biggest deal from when the 53 was announced.
Yes.
There was a potential, with his injury that he would be lost for those first 4 games. Derek Hall behind him. The Seahawks acquired Tevis Gibson, basically a rush linebacker. Bowser, who I believe played for both the Browns and the Ravens, if I'm not mistaken. He's on
just the Ravens.
Just the Ravens on the practice squad. And then Tyreek Smith, who was on the Seahawks practice squad, I believe, for a while, was reacquired as well. And then Tyrell Dodson, middle linebacker. Drake Thomas, who was acquired last year, was also kept on the 53, which is interesting to me. And then O'Connell and Michael Barrett both made the practice squad as well. This group, what are your first impressions of this group? And are you glad that obviously probably that Nwosu was not put on the pup list, but what does this mean?
Yeah, I think that's a huge deal. I really hated watching that play. That's the fortunate thing about playing guys in the preseason, but I understood why they did. I wasn't upset at the coaching staff. I think it made sense, but just unfortunate. But really lucky that he seems like he's turning in the right direction. Potentially even being able to play in week 1, they might push it, maybe just play him in week 2. I get that. I think, honestly, frankly, I think they can handle the Broncos without Nwosu. So I'd probably just rest them week 1 just to be safe. Anyway, I really, as high as I am on the defensive line, maybe not quite as high on the edge group, but still very high I think it's interesting. I think we should probably discuss that Daryl Taylor is no longer on this team.
Yes.
Daryl Taylor traded for ultimately. I mean, this was not a direct transaction. Daryl Taylor was traded for a 6th-round pick. Travis Gibson was picked up for a 6th-round pick. So technically, same compensation. It wasn't exactly even trade transaction wise, but for all intents and purposes, they swapped those guys out. Travis seeming to have a little bit more upside as a not a runner, but a run blocker, setting that edge just a little bit better. I think it's not the strong suit of his game either, but we all know DT's struggles with that.
Well, but Taylor, wasn't he traded before Nwosu got hurt?
Yes.
So he was traded before Nwosu got hurt because he was seen as, I think Taylor being traded was as much about the ascendancy of Hall as it was anything.
Yeah.
And they knew that Taylor was on the bubble, so they wanted to get something for him, but then had to go back and acquire someone once Nwosu got hurt. I don't know if they had that deal in mind when Taylor was traded, but yeah, I think it's interesting, and I think it says something about sacks being not overrated, but his sack number was good, right? You look at the ESPN ticker and you see, oh man, like Taylor had all those sacks and they traded him for a 6. But I think to your point, it speaks to the fact that A, he was trash against the run, and B, he didn't pressure the quarterback all the time relative to, the number of sacks that he was able to get. So I don't know. I like Daryl Taylor. I like the idea of Daryl Taylor when they drafted him. I think, Hall replacing him or taking some of those snaps, I think is a positive for the Seahawks moving forward.
Yeah, I think I think it was a couple things with Daryl Taylor. One, Daryl Taylor sometimes his effort is not all the way there.
Yep.
And I think there's no quicker way to get off of Mike Macdonald's team than you don't put in maximum effort every snap. And I don't get the sense that was Daryl Taylor's game. Not only do I not get the sense, I witnessed that not be Daryl Taylor's game, but also, one thing that Macdonald talks about is disruption. Like that physicality and being disruptive. That's not Daryl Taylor's game. Also, he is great at when he gets pressure, finishing the job. He's a great finisher, but he's a finesse player, frankly, because whenever he's not creating or getting a sack, he's not basic. I mean, it's hard to you don't notice him on the field, really. Right. So I think that was a bit of a personality clash in addition to, his flaws. But given John Snyder says that he was interested in this guy and had been trying to get him for a couple of years now. Now, I don't know if that's just something you say or not. I don't know if that's just if they truly were going to get this guy if Nwosu didn't get hurt. I don't know. It's hard to say. But anyway, I feel pretty good about the role. I don't know much about Gibson's game, but you're talking about a depth piece, and they obviously saw him as an upgrade and a better fit. So on that, I say good on them. Did you ask me about Tyrese Knight? Did we?
We started to get into it. I do want to say I think with Coach Macdonald, and this is one of the major differences between him and Pete Carroll, is you got to be a professional. You've got to show up for work, and you've got to be assignment sound.
Yeah.
And you've got to be able to stop the run, right? And that none of those things are Taylor, right? Taylor has this ability to get to the quarterback. He's lean, he's fast, right? He has acceleration, but he gets run over in the run game. There were times where the gap integrity was terrible.
Yeah.
He was just he was flighty a little bit, right? A little bit of a knucklehead. And those are the kinds of players that Pete Carroll was patient with,
right?
Because he saw talent there. From Mike Macdonald's Michigan days to Baltimore to now in Seattle, he ain't putting up with that. That's not his thing, right? That is not, he is all about doing the right thing. being in the right spot. You can't screw around, and you really can't freelance that much unless he's saying you are that freelance player.
Right.
And so I think that, yeah, I think you're totally right. Just simply the fit of Daryl Taylor in a Mike Macdonald defense just doesn't make any sense at all. And I understand. I think he probably was on the chopping block, if not traded to the Bears for that 6th round pick. So Tyrese Knight, we talked a lot about him when he was drafted. From what I saw and then what I read, he really did flash in this preseason. There are some really great instincts there. What's your take on Knight as of right now?
I'm gonna say the linebacker room, like the opposite of the tight end room. Tight end room trending down, in my opinion. Linebacker room trending up. I still see a lot of. It's interesting though, because sometimes there were times when I just felt like Tyrese Knight was guessing out there, even in the preseason.
Sure.
I'm not sure he was the most assignment sound. I think he's getting there though. He's a rookie. I think though that he's kind of the player I saw on tape, but I think maybe what I did not account for or understand as much is, and Mike Macdonald obviously understands more, is that that's not as problematic in his scheme. That a guy with those challenges, I don't think would ever work in a Pete Carroll defense. I just don't see a scenario where they would not get ran over, exposed in every front. But it seems like Mike Macdonald knows how to place him and give him just enough. Mike Macdonald even talked about like him needing to get better in certain areas when it comes to communication, things like that. He's still got a lot of room to grow, basically. But I think he was put in good positions, which is what you love about what Mike Macdonald does. And I think because of that, he can be serviceable, which is far, far more than I ever thought he would be. So I'm higher on him because of coaching more than me just seeing a tremendous difference in the player. But I'm happy that we're getting what we're getting out of him. I'm happy that we have a guy. I was very concerned that he wouldn't even be playable. And we needed some depth, obviously, given how injured Baker's been over the offseason. We needed some depth. And it seems like Knight can be that guy. Mike Macdonald did confirm that if Baker is not able to go week 1, Tyrese Knight is going to be that guy. And him starting in week 1 was a far dream when I watched that tape after he got drafted. So kudos to Mike Macdonald. Kudos to Tyrese Knight for working hard and learning and doing his best to grow as a player. And I guess I will touch a little bit on John Radigan, Seahawks legend John Radigan getting cut.
Adios.
I'm not really shedding tears over that.
Nope.
Neither Patrick O'Connell. I like Drake Thomas as a prospect better, like his upside. They kept him. They seem to like him a lot. I'm just going to trust that. I mean, they got rid of a guy they just traded for, and Michael Barrett, to keep Drake Thomas. At this point, Knight being able to start week 1 has earned. Mike Macdonald has earned the linebacker guru. I will give him linebacker guru until proven otherwise. And so if he likes Drake Thomas, I'm good with Drake Thomas. So I'm good with the room.
Michael Jackson was going to get cut if he was on this team, right? If he made it through training camp, he was getting cut. So Barrett not making the 53, to me, people are making a big deal out of you traded for this guy and he didn't make the 53. I don't think they see it that way. I think because Jackson was already going to be gone, it's not the same thing. I also think that, he is on the practice squad, and I did find it interesting that they kept Thomas on the 53 instead of him. That might also be just an assignment thing and being in the organization long enough to be able to play in an emergency. I don't know. As for Knight, I think I'm higher on his upside. I do think has the potential to be more than serviceable. And I was excited. I really enjoyed watching him play. I think there's a bit of explosiveness that I didn't necessarily know was there. I think there were better instincts than he was given credit for, I think, on specifically on this podcast. I do think he's a starter. It wouldn't surprise me to see him start and then him hold on to that starting job, even when the linebacker core is healthy, in part because of what he means to the future of the team. But I think this room is in a much better place now than I think we anticipated coming into the preseason. And quite frankly, I think this is going to sound crazy, but I think these linebackers are in a better place than we were last year with Bobby Wagner and Jordan Brooks. In part because I anticipate the Seahawks putting them in a better position to succeed than we did last year when Brooks and Wagner were in pass coverage 15 yards down the field every darn down, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't think the room is necessarily a huge positive as of yet, but I don't know that it's going to be a subtraction in the way that we thought maybe it was, or say a month ago or so, right?
Yeah, no, I'd agree. I think, and I think that's what you want. I mean, a ton of resources in linebackers, what we're trying to get away from, off-ball linebacker at least. That's what we're trying to get away from. And I like what I saw from Tyrel Dodson. I don't know what to expect from Baker, but I'm sure they seem confident that he'll be ready to go and he'll be doing well. I'll take that. And most importantly, I'm not sure if we really I think we touched on it briefly, but having Bowser as a practice squad guy who's got tons of experience in this Mike McDonald defense, who is a guy who was proven in the NFL, who's given good, solid production, not a star, but he's an excellent depth piece. And surely, in my opinion, an NFL player, no question, but he's coming off injury. I think there was some sort of weird injury thing that went on with him and the Ravens. So anyway, he's on the practice squad as a result. I think that's kind of like a ramp up thing. Wouldn't surprise me if ultimately he worked his way up to the 53 man, but that gives me even more confidence about this linebacker room, just knowing that you got a guy like that on the practice squad. Even if you got questions about what Drake Thomas can be, if he struggles, you know where you can go. The answer's already there.
He's no Radigan. He's no O'Connell, right? He's a legitimate, stout NFL linebacker with experience, which is very different than what we're used to as a depth piece or on the practice squad.
Correct.
I like it.
All right.
Secondary, if you're ready.
Yep.
Cornerback room, Reek Woolen, Trey Brown, Spoon, Nehemiah Pritchett, and D. Williams. Artie Burns to the practice squad, but that's kind of in name only. They expect Artie Burns to be on the 53 week 1.
Yep.
I would anticipate D. Williams going onto the practice squad at that point in time.
Yeah.
Big news with the corners is that DJ, why am I forgetting his last name?
James.
James, I believe a 6th round pick out of Auburn, did not make the practice squad.
Yeah.
Your thoughts with this cornerback room?
Stacked. Stacked and exciting. I kind of hope they can still find a way to keep D. Williams on this. I mean, get rid of another offensive lineman or something. I don't know. I like D. Williams as a return guy. I really do. He seems kind of electric at that position, and that's something that we know it's a well-documented challenge in recent years. But anyway, back to the corners. I can't speak enough about how high I am on Devin Witherspoon and Reek Woolen as a corner duo. Just what you saw. I mean, there's been a ton of buzz coming out of training camp for both of these guys, but just seeing the videos of Reek Woolen absolutely not locking down. Calvin really was in jail. He was in jail. He couldn't do anything for 2 days in a row. You expect the offensive guy to come back and take advantage, and he's studied, he's got some film on him, and so then day 2, especially a veteran, you expect him to be able to win more reps. Man, Reek Woolen had that guy in jail. I'm sure no one was happier to see him go than Calvin Ridley when they left Nashville, Tennessee. So anyway, that just got me super excited about what I feel like can truly be the best cornerback duo in the league, hands down. Trey Brown, who we all know has great qualities, I think is a really great number three.
Mhm.
I'm excited to see how they're going to use Witherspoon and Trey Brown, especially because, you know, I think Trey Brown's snaps and how often he will play would depend on how Witherspoon is used, I would just say. Artie Burns getting cut, I agree with you. I think they're gonna do. They did it last year. Actually, just waited till week one and then brought him back, so he's not guaranteed. I think it's really just a money thing. That
Mhm.
he played, but Artie Burns played with the starters quite a bit. He was in his own package, so I
Right.
expect him to still be a part of this team, assuming that his health is in okay. That seems to be a question. Something about his toe. We also saw him
Mhm.
go down in the final preseason game. It looked season ending.
Mhm.
That does not seem to be the case because not only, you know, I mean, there was no injury designation when he was cut, and now that he's back, he's not on pup or anything. Like there's nothing. They don't know what the timeline will be. So
Right.
hopefully he ends up being able to play. Um, it is a little surprising that they cut DJ James. In some
Mhm.
ways, it's not. In some ways, it is. I always felt like the double backing in cornerbacks was a little overkill, given that
Right.
they already were stacked at the position. But I guess when you're taking best available, it's a little bit waste of a draft pick. But when you're talking about a six rounder, it's not anything I'm gonna cry about. It's
Right.
interesting that he didn't even make the practice squad. He did have a
That
terrible
was
game
that
in
was the
there.
surprising part to me, right?
Yeah,
Was that he didn't make the practice squad.
yeah,
The thing that stands, so yes, I think the first thing is you got this incredible, incredible like tandem, right? This is
yeah.
to me the best tandem of corners in the NFL,
Yep,
hands down.
yep.
Now, the cool thing to me is that you've got if something happens to really any of them, it won't be the same cornerback room, but you have pieces you can move. It's not like if one guy goes down, you're screwed. This
Right,
is, Burns has proven that he can play in the slot, which I think is really important, right? That's how he made this team, was proving
right.
that he could play in the slot in the preseason. Now you've got Spoon can play in the slot when Trey Brown is in. If you want Spoon to play on the outside in the nickel, now you move Burns into the slot. You've got this versatility, and you're not really falling off from a skill perspective by moving some of these pieces around. And
Yep.
Pritchett, in previous years, Pritchett would have been somebody who was counted on to play real snaps. Now, with this, with Burns, Spoon, Brown, Woolen, Pritchett can just develop, and he may become a starter down the road because he was able to watch and play sporadically for 3 years and really truly develop. So I don't know. What stands out to me with this entire team right now is you've got depth on everywhere. Running back, we talked about the depth. Wide receiver, offensive line, defensive line, even linebacker. That we were worried about the depth coming into the preseason. Now we're talking about a deep linebacker room. We've got a really athletic, long fifth corner who can just watch. This team is the way that they built out the kind of the meat of this roster is really impressive to me.
And
And I think players like Pritchett being the number 5 corner is indicative of a lot of that depth.
yep. To your point, real quick, as you're talking about the depth, even with what we feel like is the weakest point of the team, which is the offensive line, you've
Mm-hmm.
got at least a ton of numbers there. You got tons of options there. So even in that regard, the weakest link on team, you still have some. It's not the same kind of depth, but
Right.
you have depth there. Even
Yep.
so, just to illustrate your point more,
So
absolutely.
the last position, we're not going to talk about punter and kicker because we're just not.
Yeah.
The last position to talk about are the safeties. Seahawks keep uh, Love and Kobe Bryant at free safety. Keep Rayshawn Jenkins and Kayvon Wallace as the strong safeties. Reed, Okada, and Blair are all signed to the practice squad. No surprises there to me. Your first thoughts about the safety room?
Solid.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty much all I got. It's solid. Um, Nervous about if we have to play Kobe Bryant because Jenkins is injured right now. Uh, Kobe. Frankly, if they had to make a cut somewhere, I'd rather them cut Kobe Bryant than D Williams. Frankly,
Who plays that safety spot then? Or do they need a fourth safety?
I think they just. I mean, I'd rather see Marquise Blair.
I
Yeah,
love Blair.
yeah,
And I love seeing him back. I just feel like he should be on the team. You know what I mean?
yeah.
Even if
I agree.
maybe he's not like the right player for me, I love seeing him out there. And for whatever reason, I'm rooting for him. And maybe it's the explosive plays or the athleticism, but I don't know. I would love to see him out there. And Kobe Bryant makes me nervous. I'll
Yeah.
say right now.
Yep. I mean, frankly, and that's why I said I'd rather see if they've got to make a choice. If Artie Burns is brought back up to the 53 man, and I could say keep Williams for the return game. The reason I say cut Kobe Bryant is because, in my opinion, one of Bryant's biggest strengths is his ability to have a nose for the ball,
Yep.
and he's always around the ball.
Yep.
Well, what is Marquise Blair known for? That's what this guy does, along
Mhm.
with being a hammer. He is
Mhm.
also known for forcing fumbles and doing the exact same thing. And
Mhm.
so, and I think he's got a bit more upside in terms of being assignment sound
Right.
than what Kobe Bryant has shown to be. Even in the preseason, he had several missed cues. It seems like a miscommunication, and it seems like it was kind of on him.
Mhm.
Um, but those things just tend to happen when Kobe Bryant's on the field. Those explosive plays, those blown coverages. It's not a coincidence to me that when he's playing, those things happen more frequently. So
Right.
I say give Marquise Blair a shot, man. I mean, if you again, if Burns is coming back up, keep D Williams, bring Blair back up. I feel a lot better about this room with Blair being that guy instead of Kobe Bryant. Put Kobe Bryant on the practice squad. I mean,
Right.
he's not a lost cause in my mind, but he's just some about it. He's very new to this position. So I think it's fair to say, he's been all over this field, right? I think safety probably is his best way to stay in the NFL, but if he's got to learn it more and develop on the practice squad, that's fine with me. I think that makes sense. So yeah,
I would
that's my
say
take.
I think the Bryant call, I'm just going to say I trust Coach McDonald. If he sees something there and he wants to keep him, then that's great. I do expect them to do expect to see some churn in the safety room.
Hmm.
If not this year, certainly next year.
Yeah,
Um, but yeah, I think that fourth safety with Bryant is a place that can be very much be improved. I think if Reed is healthy at some point, maybe he becomes that guy as well. But
right.
I don't know. I think, to close out, I think overall, I look at this roster and I'm like, this is a solid team and a deep team with with upside. And if the Niners do show some weakness, right? If Trent Williams doesn't come back, if CMC does get hurt, if Brock Purdy isn't great, I think this team has the opportunity to win the division, right? You've got Arizona, I think, is in the ascendancy. They have some really great upside, kind of high end talent now. The Rams are the Rams, but this team is solid. This team, I believe, won't make nearly the number of mistakes that they have in the past years under Coach Carroll. I'm ecstatic. I'm so pleasantly surprised by this 53, how deep it is. I'm not as scared about injuries as I was in the past with the Seahawks. The Seahawks before, you're like, if there's one injury at this position, they're toast. And the
Yeah.
only place I can really say that about is tackle, right? Offensive tackle, and that's in part just because Lucas is on the pup list. It's not because they don't have the talent within the organization. It's just that the one guy is broken, right?
Right.
And so I don't know. I'm really excited. I don't know if this is a Super Bowl contending team necessarily, but I do think this team is very much on the ascent. And this 53 and how deep it is a testament to John Schneider, to some of the philosophies of Coach McDonald. And I know I say this every podcast, but I'm so excited. I cannot wait. I cannot wait.
Yeah, to piggyback off of what you were saying, this roster is a reflection of chasing edges,
Mm-hmm.
which is Mike McDonald's mantra, and that is why you're seeing the sixth guy on the team still be a quality guy because
Mm-hmm.
Mike McDonald is chasing those edges. He's chasing the margins. He's chasing the small things that make a difference. And really, in order to talk about this team being a Super Bowl team, all we need is from some of our budding young stars to emerge as
Yep.
bona fide stars,
Yep.
to emerge as all pro, for
Mm-hmm.
DK to have a borderline at least all pro level. All pro is hard at wide receiver, granted. So even if it's all pro caliber, I think that's just what this team needs. If you get Devin Witherspoon, who can be all pro, you get Rick Woolen, who frankly I feel like should have been all pro as a rookie.
Right. Or
and-
if you got Woolen and Spoon as like being at the top of their game, and Byron Murphy as like a 10 sack penetrating D tackle, the sky's the limit.
Well, let me say this on Murphy. I'll put it out there. I don't think Murphy's going to have a ton of sacks. I think he's going to be a disruptor.
Yes,
I think he's going to be the stats don't speak to his impact guy because he struggles to wrap up. He struggles to wrap up. I think he's going to get a bunch of almost sacks. He's got to work on that, I think. And I'm not sure if rookie year, if we see a huge jump in that regard. I hope that he can, in his career, over the years, get better at that. I think it's just he got shorter arms. So I think that's what I attribute it to. But anyway, he will absolutely be a game wrecker. And so if he can have that and have that upside, and people have got to account for him, I think Leonard Williams has some Pro Bowl in him. Frankly, I know he's on the older side, but I don't think he's ever been in a really great position the way Mike McDonald's going to put him in position. So you just need a few guys. You don't need a ton.
Right.
But if you can have 3 or 4, Julian Love made a Pro Bowl last year. Can he do it again?
Right.
If you can have a couple of all pros, a few Pro Bowlers to get that elite level talent, then you're talking about Super Bowl, legitimately.
It's cool. It's cool.
Very.
We'll wrap this up.
Yep. And that's all I got.
Right on.
All right. Tino wants to tell people where they can find you, and I'll close this out.
Yes, you can find me on Twitter at Tino Jr. 20, TINOJR20. That's my personal Twitter account. You can also find the Ethos Mariners account, ETHOSMARINERS. That is the twice or 3 times weekly Mariners podcast that I do. And you can find me Saturdays and Sundays watching football from here on out.
That sounds great. Music to my ears. You can follow the show at Ethos Seahawks. Be sure to stay tuned. Probably have a couple other episodes. I think we are planning another episode with Joe Stevens. We might just have a Broncos preview. We're getting ready for that game. Football is real. Now is the time. If you are not following the show, be sure to like and subscribe if you are listening on YouTube. And until then, that's all the time we have for today. As always,
Go Hawks.